How blessed we are to be together, and how awful it is. For many of you, you weren't expecting this or to be sitting here to memorialize our beloved Danny McNamara. And it is truly shocking not to have him in our world today. We're going to do our best to remember him, to Orna and Limor and Talia and Ilan, and the whole mishpacha, the whole family. He loved you so much, so much. And you should know and you should feel that love. We're going to begin in the Psalms. Cantor Frank will chant from Psalm 23, which is in the leaflet on the right side.
Mizmor David, Adonai Robi, lo echsar, min adeshem yobetzeni, hamem benuchot yennachaleni, nafshi shoveh, yamcheni v'maglet tzedek, למען שמו, גם כי ילך בקצל מוות, אוי רע כי אתה עמדי. שבתך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד סורי, דשנת לשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ידפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
Together in the English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, who maketh me to lie down in green pastures, who leadeth me beside the still waters, who restoreth my soul, who leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for thy name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I'd like to read from the Psalms, a psalm that really evokes Danny's life, and especially the mountains that he held so dear. The psalm is about the mountains in Israel, but he grew up in other mountains, and I think the psalm related to his journey. Psalm 121. I lift my eyes up to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul. your going and coming, now and forever. How different those words feel to us, given Danny's journey. On one hand, there's an unfairness. It says that God should look out for us all the days of our life, and Danny, we believe and hope that he would have many more days of his life. But another, he had such beautiful days. Each moment he saw its beauty. He saw who each and every one of you, everyone who knew him, he touched so deeply in their soul, whether he said it out loud, or whether he just held it inside, or whether he expressed it in his art, or in the many things he did in his life through his actions. He showed love and appreciation. I was thinking a lot about the line from Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is one of the ancient teaching texts of our people from the Mishnah. And it says, Ezehu Ashir, who is rich? Someone who understands and appreciates their place and what they have. Danny, as we'll hear in his journey, his life, if you were just going to lay it out, had a lot of challenges, a lot of things that might have been setbacks for others. But he only saw joy. He only saw love. He never said, why me? He never said, why, what is it? Why are these challenges? He only said, let me find the people I love. Let me celebrate them, and we will figure it out. Orna was telling me how in the middle of the night he would often wake up and with a eureka moment, especially with plastics. So I'm going to step back and allow the family and friends to really share. And we're really only going to touch the surface here. His life was so interesting. And if you haven't had a chance, because I didn't even know until recently some of the accomplishments he had. I knew offhand some of the things he's done. But if you look out there and see his acrobatics, incredible. And his art, of course, and all the many things he did. So please do not leave this space here today without fully looking at those pictures that are out there. So we're going to have an opportunity to hear first from his children, then a friend, and then his grandchild, Brenda. So first I'm going to invite Limor to share some words about her father.
Good afternoon. I am Limor Burke, Danny's eldest daughter. Many thanks to all of you who have dedicated your Friday to celebrate his life with us. You're a true testament to the incredible legacy my father left with all of us. When I think of words that describe my dad, I immediately think of his unwavering ethical commitment to hard work, his selfless nature, and his wonderfully fun and funny spirit. Some of my strongest memories from preschool years were sitting on the living room floor on Saturday mornings watching the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner show while eating Cocoa Puff cereal. Dad and I would howl with laughter at the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote's antics. I can still hear him quoting, "Wanted, one gullible coyote, applied to manager at this theater." This shared laughter was a constant, truly showcasing his wonderful way of finding humor in life and sharing that joy with us. I also have fond memories of being allowed to go to his art studio when he was studying at UB, where attention was showered on me by his fellow artists and friends. Dad's love for producing art was eventually sidelined as our family grew, and he transitioned into industry. Seeing him leave early and return late was a new reality, but it was a clear demonstration of his selfless nature. He worked a corporate job to provide well for his family, and we all knew his unwavering commitment to us. He rose to vice president at Tri Electronics, yet he also shared his dream to create his own business. Curious about plastics, he developed a side venture, working at Plastic Systems after hours and returning home in the early morning. He built this business so he could eventually pivot to Plastic Systems full-time. During these incredibly busy times, he hung up his skis in favor of hitting the pavement. I would often accompany him on my bike while he ran. This is where we had our deepest conversations, and he shared his values with me. We talked about everything, from girl drama to babysitting mishaps, to drugs and alcohol, and his business. Dad often reminded me, you don't get something for nothing. He truly lived this principle, embodying hard work and dedication in every aspect of life. I'm going to skip ahead a few years to the time when I met my husband. I had confided in my sister that Alan was my soulmate, which, of course, this was directly reported to Central Command. My parents asked her all the key important questions, and the response was, his name is Ali Baba. He's from Madagascar. Somehow, Talia convinced my parents that Alan did not speak English, and Orna was gravely concerned. It took some talking to reassure my parents that Alan was not marrying me for the green card, since he already had one. Alan and I then went on a mini tour of Spain and Gibraltar to meet his family. A few days before we were to return to the States, Alan's dad panicked about a potential technicality in his green card and suggested we fly to Canada and cross the northern border because he felt that was safer. No questions asked, Dad volunteered to pick us up in the station wagon from Toronto, a 5-hour trip. It was soon Dad's turn to get to know Alan. He did this by giving us a tour of his favorite East Coast ski slopes. Dad had returned to skiing a few years earlier, taking my brother and his family friends to ski at Holiday Valley weekly, and sharing this love for skiing with them. The highlight of this trip was skiing Whiteface, which Dad affectionately nicknamed Iceface. The first sign that we were in for trouble was when we had to jump to get off the chairlift. We followed Dad down a trail that, although narrow, had a decent pitch until we saw 30 skiers scattered across the top of what looked like a ridge before a drop, hence the name, The Wall. The trail looked like a former logger's trail, and there was a rather large tree sticking out of the middle of the cliff-like icy drop. By the time we navigated our plan, Dad had been at the bottom of the trail waiting for us patiently. I think this was his fun form of hazing my fiancé. There was lots of talk about what was new at Plastic Systems. Dad was so proud of what he created and had so much gratitude for the employees and partner who helped him realize his dream. It was important to him to provide benefits and a supportive environment, something he valued deeply. Dad was truly the atlas of our family, holding us together with strength, morals, and love. We learned so much from his example. I am truly a better person for having been raised by him. His legacy will live on by all whom he mentored and loved. And on that note, I'm going to end my talk about the top 10 memories of Dad that I will cherish forever. Number 10, a dad who was so open-minded, he agreed to take a gaggle of teenagers to the Rocky Horror Picture Show for my 14th birthday. Quietly humored by their zealous rice-tossing, toilet paper roll throwing, and water spraying. Lisa, you remember that? Number 9, Mr. Fix-It was his alter ego, showing up at his children's dorm rooms and later homes with his toolbox and various large power tools, also used for our home projects. Number 8, his devotion to Orna, my mom. Number 7, family art projects. Number 6, his Thanksgiving plate piled high with holiday favorites and groaning under the weight of the food. Number 5, whistling to classic rock and heavy metal music. Number 4, skiing 3 generations together. Number 3, seeing his feet in the kitchen window after a 20-mile run. Walking on his hands was his cool down. Tie for number 2 between peanuts and wine and ice skating tag. And number 1, trips to art museums in every city. Dad, we love you.
Thank you, Limor. Ilan?
Thank you all for being here today. In the past few days, I found myself reflecting deeply on my father's life. And through all those emotions, one truth has remained clear. My father was an extraordinary man whose legacy will continue to resonate within all of us. Growing up, my dad epitomized what it meant to be the cool dad. But he was more than just someone who could juggle Play-Doh, walk up and down the stairs on his hands, or give impromptu horsey rides around the living room. He was a true architect of adventure, meticulously clearing snow from the driveway so we could create elaborate snow tunnels that transformed our yard into a winter wonderland. His creativity and boundless energy turned common moments into something memorable. He instilled in me a love for exploration, for imagination, and a drive to turn the ordinary into extraordinary. Some of my most cherished memories are from father-son dinners, where we were at Mighty Taco or Four Seasons. But those simple meals were never just about food, they were about true connection. We shared stories, jokes, and often indulged in far more ketchup than was necessary. He loved ketchup. But the value of our time together wasn't measured by where we were or what we were eating, but it was the bond we shared and the memories we created. Dad also introduced me to sports, starting with t-ball and baseball. I'll admit I was not the most enthusiastic player, but that never deterred him. He cheered for everything, no matter how off target I was. And when the game ended, we had a tradition of visiting the concession stand, his way of rewarding me for my efforts. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes about his approach to life. It's not always about being the best, but about participating and being present. As a skier, my dad was a true force of nature. While I was focused on simply staying upright, he would guide and glide effortlessly down the slopes with an energy and grace that belied his years. He selflessly would drive us through snowstorms to Holiday Valley, Kissing Bridge, and Tamarack, all so we could experience the same thrill of fresh powder that he enjoyed as a childhood, in his childhood. In adulthood, my dad remained my constant, always just a phone call away. Our conversations were the highlight of my week, where we would talk about everything from workouts, home repair advice, music, travel, and the development of our businesses. Whether I was tackling home maintenance projects or navigating challenges at work, he was my go-to advisor, offering practical advice and, of course, his signature of humor. Dad was many things to me: my ski buddy, my dinner companion, my favorite storyteller, my greatest cheerleader, and my mentor. He was the one who taught me how to take risks, often sharing stories of his own youthful adventures, which usually ended in mild peril, but always with a hearty laugh. And it's in these stories, these lessons, that my father lives on. My dad was the architect of my inner voice. That sarcastic, "You dummy," when I drop something, well, that's him. The quiet appreciation for nature or the curiosity about animal behavior, that's his spirit alive in me. The drive to do what's right, even when shortcuts and temptations are easier, that's his ethos passed down through the years. The cheap jug of Carlo Rossi wine in the downstairs refrigerator, that is him and only him. But the moments where we gather with friends and family, sharing a beverage and peanuts after a long, productive day, That's his spirit, his legacy, far richer than any vintage. Dad was resilient, never breaking, always bending. He had a humor that could lighten the darkest of days, a kindness that warmed everyone he encountered, and an adventurous spirit that painted our lives with color. His profound love for nature connected us all to a greater sense of purpose and peace, and his creativity was a force that transformed everything he touched. This is who Danny McNamara is, my father. His light continues to shine, much like his iconic neon sculptures, a bright, colorful flame that will forever illuminate our present and future. Thank you, Dad, for everything you gave us. We love you, and you will always live on in us.
Thank you, Ilan. I know that he heard those words. We're going to invite John Bjorgi who's going to talk about Danny's connection to the art world, I believe. Or just your friendship. Oh, just be careful. Pardon? We have a railing. Oh, you did beautifully.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I guess I got to get up here so you can hear me. Yes, we're going to step things up just a little bit. Everything these guys have said is absolutely true. Danny was a fabulous human being. But I want to talk to you about Danny the artist. And I think maybe I might be the only one that can. I've known Danny for close to 60 years. When I came to UB, it was 1970, he's the first person I met. And we've been connected somewhat ever since, mostly by phone. Now, when I first arrived, there were only 3 of us in the graduate department. We had the whole studio to ourselves, 3 people, Danny, myself, and Jolienne. And so we kind of became our own private unit. School started, we're all working in the studio, and then I noticed something a little strange. Danny worked differently than any artist I'd ever seen. You know, for most of the art world, you get an idea, you know, you do some sketches, some drawings, you put something, you lay material out to see how it's going to work and what you're doing to try to convey an idea. But with Danny, he walked into the studio, maybe he had a little mechanical drawing that he had made up, and he went to work. But so everything he was going to do was all set before it ever started, each of his pieces. And his pieces were immaculate. They were absolutely gorgeous. But everything had to be perfect in them. You know, a schlub like me might put 2 layers of paint on something, you know, and a light dusting of sandpaper. Danny would put 37 coats of whatever on it and polish every coat in between. He needed perfection. He had an image, and that's what he went for. And then at the same time, just between the 3 of us, and it usually involved a bottle of wine, we'd sit around and talk about what we were doing, just the 3 of us, and in the studio. And Danny was reticent about talking about his work. His work was gorgeous, but he was reticent about talking about it. And so time goes on, months go on, and we all had a favorite, David Smith, who had a studio up in the Adirondacks near his hometown of Ironville. Now, so road trip, we all decided to go out to the Adirondacks, got an invite to stay at Danny's house, which he described as a grand white house on a hill, one of the best houses in Ironville, overlooking a beautiful lake. Okay? Now, we're 60 years ago, and for maybe some of the family who know this house a little bit better, when we got there, it was a bit of a shock because it was a little less than a grand house. In fact, 60 years ago, it was already falling down. But that's not what Danny saw. That's not at all the house that he saw up there, because he loved that place, he loved that lot, he loved the town. He loved it all. So we get up there, and the next thing we do is we meet his mom. Okay? She was a really interesting woman. If you think about Danny, reverse it 180 degrees. She was a bundle of energy. She's very nice, but she was a bundle of energy. She did 12 things at the same time. I don't think she ever finished a thing that I know of. And the last thing on her list, Orna, close your ears, was housekeeping. That didn't happen. So we get to the house, you know, and Zoe and I are wandering around. Danny immediately dove right in because the kitchen hadn't been cleaned in 37 years. But then we walk into what was kind of their living room, and there's all these pictures on the wall from the Acumax, from the circus. He's never mentioned this to anybody, to either of us. We have no clue of this at all. And here he is, some of the pictures you see out there, but a lot more. And so we've got to pull him out of the kitchen. And then we see the room where they removed the ceiling so they'd have enough height to do their jumping and all that kind of stuff. So all of a sudden there's another whole new person that's here that comes from a whole new back, but he's never mentioned it. Never once. So we go off, we see the Smith studio. We did what we were going to. On the way back, we drummed him as to circus life. It's a whole new thing for both of us. And he was thrilled with the attention and talked the entire way from Ironville back to Buffalo, which was a pretty unusual state for him. So we got back, and so now I'm seeing a little bit of a different Danny as it goes. As we go, time goes on. I got to keep jumping because I only have 5 minutes. We all graduate, we all move in different directions, but we all somewhat stayed connected and have for all of our lives. And I thought Danny's work is absolutely beautiful as an artist. It's impeccably crafted. It's gorgeous stuff. And I thought what he was doing was all about form and shape and color and light, and as they put them, and grace, as they all go together. And they were just, all of them were beautiful, and they still are. So I believed that for about the next 50 years. And then one day, out of the blue, I don't know if I called him or he called me, I was having trouble in my studio. We weren't even talking about his work. And so I take a picture of what I'm doing, I send it to him, and he's trying to help me, and we're just talking as it's going. And it all had to do with inspiration. And out of the blue, you know, if you ever caught Danny, every once in a while, he would have a thread of an idea that he would just drop someplace. But he wouldn't follow it up. But once you learned that, you could take that thread of the idea and pull it. And then it wasn't that he was holding back anything. It was that he just never thought to share that. Once you pulled it, then he would expand upon it. And that's the moment that I found out that all of his work, that his source of information for art had still come from the circus. You know, when his brother died, that ended their act. And I thought that it all ended at that point in time. I now realize that Danny has been in the circus for the last 60 years in some level. And if you look at his work in that context, not all of his work, but a lot of it makes so much more sense looking at it as his past. He's somebody that, almost like two people in a way. His outside is gregarious, is fun, he's trying to do everything right. But he's got an inside to him that just sort of builds what he's doing onto himself. And that's why he could develop his art as he did. He thought it all through, so he knew exactly however much time that took, so that he could solve it, and then it was just a matter of the mechanics of putting it together. That was Danny. So, that was probably 5 years ago that I made this discovery of this connection. And then we talked about it from then on as it went. We've been in touch the whole 60 years pretty much, sometimes more or less, depending on what's going on in our lives. But Danny was the least ready person to pass on that I think I can ever think of. Probably just about a month ago, he called me up because he had a new idea, and he wanted to know what I knew about laser cutters because he wanted to cut laser patterns out for a piece he had in mind. Now, I didn't know much about him, but I did know that Carl Fuller, a mutual friend of ours, just bought one. So use Carl's, that's fine. And he was going to take with that, but that's also at a time when he was having trouble with his energy, but not having trouble with his ideas. So we tentatively set up that he was going to come down and do it, which unfortunately never happened. But it's only because physically he couldn't, but his intentions were there. And then about a week before he passed away, because I'm calling him on a pretty regular basis now, we're talking, and it was a moment in time when he was feeling a little stronger. And I'm not sure how it came up, but I think it was another one of those threads that he would like a show for his work. And so I caught the thread and said, well, why don't we have a show for the two of us? A two-man show. And he jumped at the idea. By the way, that is going to happen, because I'm going to make it happen. I don't know exactly when or where, but it's going to happen. So we kind of got that going, and then maybe a day or two before he passed away, I had my final conversation with him. And he was in pain. He could hardly talk. All he had to do, though, was to ask me, could I send him a picture of what I'm doing in the studio so he could see it, which I did. And then made plans to come down and see him, and he was gone before I could. So he's one of those people that is absolutely irreplaceable. And I know we're not supposed to be that, but there are some that are. So he had a very, very rich inner life, even beyond everything else that he did. Thank you much.
Thank you, John. Thanks for sharing about your friendship. We're going to have Brandon speak about his grandfather.
Hello, my name is Brandon. I'm one of Danny's grandchildren. I feel so lucky to have had him as my grandpa, and I wanted to say a few words on behalf of my family. He taught us so much that we will never forget. I owe so much of the person I am and will become to him and his mentorship. Grandpa was a profound guiding light to me. The only other mentor as bright is my dad. That place in my heart will forever be his. He holds a huge piece in all of our hearts. His stories about performing in the circus inspired me to start strength training. Every time I learned a new skill, he was the first person I wanted to show. I always remember the biggest debate was whether to send it to him virtually or to wait to surprise him in person. The decision was always pretty easy because he wasn't a big technology fan, so I would often wait months to show him my new skill or acrobatic trick. His nod of approval was always more than enough motivation for the next step. This training didn't just make me physically stronger. It taught me a lesson that Grandpa embodied. Motivation gets you started, discipline earns results. I know that there's nothing I could do that would have made him any prouder than he already was of me and all of his grandchildren. He inspired us, and he found a way to show each of us what we needed most. For me, it was training. For my sister Maya, it was art, and so on. I've learned through many of my interactions with Grandpa and other people that you'll never truly find someone quite like him, and the mark he left will never fade. He's really not the type of person that can be replaced, but he's the exact type of person I hope to become, and those are some huge shoes to fill.
Thank you, Brandon. I know that how much he loved you and all of his grandchildren, his whole family. A few weeks ago, I had an interaction with Orna, and she told me that Danny wasn't well. And Danny had always been a wonderful congregant. He always came in with a smile. He'd sit quietly with his friends. He always participate with Orna, and was just a wonderful congregant. I didn't really actually get to know him very well because he was pretty quiet. Orna and I have, I'd say, be friends for quite a while. She trained my kids in Hebrew and has just been a wonderful community resource and just a wonderful person. Orna told me that Danny wasn't doing so well, and I didn't know exactly what that meant, and then she said that he wanted to talk to me. So I said, okay. It's not so normal, actually, for people to come before they pass and share their story. It's a rare gift that someone would trust me, but also just to really have that story. He was in Virginia with his daughter, family, and wonderful hospital, and he was being taken care of, and he felt very comfortable there. So we had to talk on the phone. So it happened I had a little bit of time. I called him up. And we had the most amazing conversation. It was one of those kind of life-changing conversations. Sometimes you don't know kind of what an interaction's going to be like. He said that, Rabbi, I always appreciate your services and appreciate you. I want to share a little bit about my life. And I didn't know exactly where he'd go or how he'd say. He started telling me from his earliest days about his family. It was a remarkable story about a time that's no more, a place that's no more. It was about what he saw as the most magical childhood. And he said, I'm going to give you a book, which Orna gave to me. His wonderful book, Daring the Deep Hole, by him and also Enid over there, helped him to put it together. In it, he describes the childhood and what he shared with me. His father was basketball coach, his family, his wonderful parents that John described as mom, his father, very wonderful community people, and his siblings, Michael and Michaela. And what a wonderful life that they had, and how picturesque. I want to just share a little bit about what that world was, because he went into detail, but he wrote about this a lot in his book as well. Crown Point. He actually, as I said, he had a lot of things that people would say are hard, kind of like his house. So I'm not surprised at all that it was different than maybe from the outside that he experienced it. because his childhood, unfortunately, his father the family had to move quite a bit. And they were often not settled, and sometimes even, he describes in the book how there were times where he only had the chickens and the eggs from the farm that his father was working at one particularly rough time. But he talked about this wonderful place in the Adirondacks, Crown Point. Here's how he described it. And I just want to capture, because this is how he saw his life, with such magic. We immersed ourselves in the beauty surrounding us, but one place near our home enthralled us more than all the rest. Beyond the Penfield Pond Dam, Putnam Creek flowed eastward through a shallow stream bed strewn with boulders. Then it passed more hurriedly through a gorge, suddenly dropping many feet between massive rock walls to create a roaring waterfall. Over eons, the falling water had sculpted out a deep natural pool at the base of the falls, to a depth of some 30 feet. My friends and I spent hot summer days scampering over the rocks and diving recklessly into the cold water below. Other times we sat still, letting the concordant sounds of rushing falls and burbling creek over us, while dappled sunlight filtered through all tall trees above and graced our private sanctuary with dabs of gold. We called this place the Deep Hole, and its magic would touch us forever. I have seen many beautiful spots around the world, but to this day, the Deep Hole remains my favorite place on earth. You can hear there what a beautiful writer he was, but just how lovingly he saw this. He saw the world with such magic, and describing this life, which was hard, in the mountains. When he described it to me over the phone, I didn't actually know exactly. It was a very beautiful time, beautiful place. And he talked about his life in the circus, as John was describing. And, I almost couldn't believe it, because it was such a difference. It's kind of the same reaction that John had, actually. Oh, such a different Danny. I didn't know him at that time. Most of us, I don't think any of us really here knew him at that time. But how they supported each other and loved each other. In the book, he talked about fighting a little with his siblings, which is natural. But it was they were cheering each other on, and they loved each other so much. And then he described that horrific day when he got notice about Michael's passing. And you could see, even though Michael was kind of like the star, I guess, he had the charisma, he said, "You can find it on YouTube." And I watched him on the game show that he was on, standing on the one finger. And he said he was about to take off. He was about to go on the Ed Sullivan Show. He got notice of that. And there was a terrible incident, and I read about it here more in the book, how Michael was out with a friend, and they were walking about, and a drunk driver, back then they didn't have as much policing involved, who had been known to be very dangerous, came towards them, and Michael actually saved his friend's life. And he was so strong, his heart, the doctor said, even though he had injuries, that he wasn't going to survive. And Danny described in the book how he sat with him every day. But he had injuries that no one could survive from, but his body was still so strong. The doctors had never seen someone, because he had been on his hands and doing these amazing acrobatics his whole life. And it was a terrible tragedy. And as John was saying, he dedicated so much of his art. Orna welcomed me into their home, and half of his pieces have the little silhouette of a person standing on one finger. What a wonderful ode. He always saw his brother that way. And then he got to this part about Orna. And I'm sorry, it's kind of like towards the end of the journey here. But I have to say, it's my favorite part of the story. And he talked about being in college. He went to the college in Pittsfield that was Plattsburgh, sorry, I knew I had, sorry. I'm still getting used to the SUNY system. I've been here 17 years. So, but Plattsburgh. So it was the nearest. His mother actually picked it out because it was as close he could come back home. And they got assigned one day, his buddies, they were gonna go to the International House. And each of them was gonna pick a woman, a date from a different country. And he chose Israel. He was kind of interested in it. And I got the story from both sides, which was wonderful. So Danny, and he describes it again in his book, he comes in, it was supposed to be informal, but they didn't really tell the women that. And so he came kind of schleppy, as we'd say. He didn't really have many fancy clothes anyways, I think, and he had kind of his circus clothes on. And he shows up at the dormitory, which he's not, there's a lot of restrictions back then. And Orna just like is in complete shock that this is her date because he shows up just so schleppy. So he disappears, and Danny's like, because he was like already in love with her. He hadn't even met her, and he just already had fallen in love with how beautiful she was and just something about her. So she disappears for a while, and he's waiting and thinks, well, I guess I blew it, it's over. And right at that moment, she walks out, just dressed to the nines. And then he takes her to a bar that none of them are allowed to go to. He was already getting Orna in trouble. So it was kind of like this after hours with illegal drinking and all this sorts of thing. And they have this wonderful conversation. And he's so real and so authentic. He asks her out again, and she comes back after curfew, and she gets in trouble for that. and Orna, I love it. You reamed them out. I love that. And so it happens again, and they don't even come to bother her. But he said to me, "I'm so lucky to have had this love affair. I love her the same as I loved her that first day. And that we had a fairy tale of a life." When we think about Danny, those of you that he showed some of that, if you hadn't heard, please, again, take a look. I hope that it helps us, because sometimes life isn't very magical. I hope sometimes we can see life through Danny's eyes. If we can see life through Danny's eyes, it will be so much better. I don't know how he did it, but he had that way about him. I want to read and conclude my remarks with a poem by Robert Frost. I'm going to read this poem because it was inspired by the place that Danny lived as a child, a place he loved. And so that place that he describes so beautifully, this is what it is. This is the walk that Robert Frost went on. Stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. Danny, may your memory always be for a blessing. May we continue to find joy and to share your stories lovingly with generations that come after us. I invite you to rise as we turn to the Amaleh, the prayer of the departed. Danny's Hebrew name Danielle Ben Avraham. And it's in your leaflet in the middle.
Marevrachabi, Shachen Bamavramim, Hansem Nuchan Nichona, Takakafir, Hashechina, Him Kedoshim, Utahorim, Shehalach le'olamo. Baal harakabim yasirem beseter knafav le'olamim. Mitzra hachayim et nishmato Adonai hu nachalato ve'yanuach b'shalom hamishkava v'nomar Amen.
Together in the English. Lord, full of mercy, who dwells on high, find fitting rest upon the wings of the Shekhinah, divine presence, and the heights of the holy and pure, who shine like the glow of the firmament for the soul of Daniel McNamara, who has gone to his eternal world. For we pray in memory of his soul, may his resting place be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the Master of Mercy shelter him in the shelter of God's wings forever. And may God bind his soul in the bond of life. The Lord is his inheritance, and may he rest peacefully upon his resting place. And let us say, Amen. Just hold on to these, especially if you're coming to the cemetery.
For those of you who are going in procession to Whitechapel Memorial Park, we just ask you to put your bright lights and your four-way flashers on. And also, Orna has invited everyone after the interment at Whitechapel back to her residence. The residence is listed in your program, along with the Shiva